Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Temple Podcast. We've been out for a quick minute, but we're back in it now. And I thought I'd come back with a very special guest. The newest addition to the greatest team right now in the Australian region. That's Josh Inns Potter. How are you, mate?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
That's more than a pleasure. So just before we go any further into this interview, I do want to preface the video portion of this with the fact that right now Josh here has a bit of a laggy computer. It's that Oz internet swag, and you're going to get about one frame a second over there in the perfectly pristine white house that you live in. I must say, you do have a very clean house. I would have thought otherwise, considering you live with the Greyhounds boys.
Yeah, it's clean in the background, but like once you get to like the lounge room, it's pretty messy. So it's just on show for you in the background.
Right. Okay. It's the set, the fake set of what it's like living with other Greyhounds members.
Exactly.
Well, so I do want to. We'll start off with going through some of your past lineups before we get into actually playing for Greyhounds right now, because that'll most likely be the main portion of this interview. But I do want to go back just to. Well, we'll start with the old Chiefs lineup, because in that lineup you actually used to play with Malta before. So was that a connection at all that sort of helped with getting into Greyhounds? Were you comfortable making that connection or networking and moving in?
Yeah, I've kept in touch with Malta for like 3 years or whatever. We still talk every now and then. Same with all the other Chiefs guys, and probably had an effect on who they're picking up. I say Malta would have had a good say in getting me.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I'm not really sure. Fair. Yeah. I think it was a team decision, I think.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I mean, obviously, you excuse me, you have been in fairly good form over at Order, but just before we go into there, just for continuity's sake, obviously you did play in Tainted Minds. You kind of had a weird sort of stint in pretty much every team that was in the top 4 of Australia, which is a unique pathway. But what was the Tainted Minds experience like, I guess?
Well, it was a bit different. When I was leaving Chiefs, I had the opportunity to go to Order or Tainted Minds, basically. Mm-hmm. So I practiced with Order. I practiced with Order for a bit, and then I got the offer from Tainted Minds, and I decided to go with them for reasons that I won't say. But yeah, it wasn't the greatest time in my career. I mean, it was fun, but it was also rough. We sort of were known as like chokers, I guess. And we didn't get many opportunities overseas, so yeah.
And
it was good though.
Does it, when you play in a team like that, I guess that kind of has like you said, a reputation for choking, does that change your mentality at all when you move into different teams? Do you find yourself more motivated to make sure that kind of thing doesn't ever hit you again?
Yeah, I think you definitely find yourself more motivated. In TM, it was sort of affecting you. It definitely affects you like mentally after a bit, especially when you see all the stuff on like. People say they don't look at the stuff, but I do, and yeah, it sort of gets to your head. But like, just the fresh start, especially in Order, helped a lot with my confidence and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh wow. Oh, we had a temporary webcam fix there, but
yeah, I can see it. It's sort of moving a little bit.
The struggles of life. Oh well. Yeah. So moving then on from Tainted Minds, you then went into obviously the most recent team that you were in before Greyhounds, which was Order. Now, Order definitely had some ups and downs. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's definitely fair to say.
Yeah, and so you did have some pretty high moments where you were at one point competing with Greyhounds. I would say you were in that number two spot there, really competing with them. And then a lot of the times you'd sort of go to these qualifiers for those international events and kind of fall short. Now, what do you think was the main sort of reasons for those results?
I'm not sure, to be honest. Like, it's a real tough one. I just, yeah, I don't think we had the right idea of how to play. I think Greyhound were always like 2 steps ahead of everyone.
Mm.
Especially like, yeah, after they started going overseas, I mean, they were 100% better than everyone by a long, long shot. I don't think it was us choking or anything, like nerves or anything. It was just like how we played. Even in like practice and stuff, you could tell we were just like, I don't know.
Yeah, is
We
it
were sort of on different pages, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. Is it similar to, because I talked to Hats before about his, I guess, experience when he plays teams, or when he used to play teams like Genuine and Ground Zero, where you kind of know what they're going to do. Did you ever get that feeling from Greyhound, like they kind of just already had your strat book and they knew where you were going to go? Is that the kind of feeling, or was it something different?
I think it was a little bit of that, but it was also more in individual decision making and stuff, like
Right.
skill. Yeah.
Experience, then. Oh, international
Yeah, I
experience
guess.
is probably a better word for it.
Yeah, I think they definitely obviously knew what I was going to do as well, but yeah, it's hard to say really.
Fair enough. Now, um, talking about international experience, because obviously now you've got this perspective of the fact that you definitely used to play for Order, but now being in this Greyhounds lineup, is there anything, I know it hasn't been too long, but is there anything that immediately sort of stepped out to you as, oh, why weren't we doing this over at Order?
I think it's just like the style here is more loose, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
You have your own, you make your own decisions individually, as well as Dexter is a really good leader as well. He takes over when he needs to, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it's just like the work ethic. I think is the main thing.
Fair enough. So it's the environment then, you would say.
I guess so. I'm not saying the environment in order was bad because like it was still good. We all wanted to win, obviously, but
Yeah.
it just wasn't working. I don't know why. Wish I had the answers.
Well, I mean, listen, it's obviously a problem that's affected the scene for a very long time, so I'm not expecting you to be the messiah that comes down and goes, and I have solved it, everyone, you know? Like,
Yeah.
so I wouldn't worry too much about that. So with this, like, the work environment, then you were talking about Dexter, and obviously he's kind of almost become this new star. I wouldn't say new because he's been doing it for a minute now, but he's become this sort of, I would say, next to JKS, right? If we're going to even include Renegades, he's probably one of the biggest stars in our scene, just in terms of skill, and then also the fact that he can use that in game leading as well. So, what are some of the main things that you noticed playing with him that sort of, I guess, allow you to, like you said before, make those individual decisions and sort of almost boost everyone around him?
Mm. And he's just he's an incredibly smart player, obviously,
Yeah.
and he's like, I think his best what's the word quality, like as a leader and player, is like he's very patient, and he gets a lot of kills because he's very patient as well. And yeah, I'm not really sure.
So it's a, I guess, a vibe, and obviously you haven't been in the team for too long, so that might be, it's just sometimes in-game leaders have a certain vibe. When you think about in-game leaders though in the Australian region, are there any like names that sort of, I guess, speak out to you as people that you would shout for in our scene?
I think probably it's hard to say because I've only ever played under like 2 real in-game leaders, which is like Chris and Dexter and Imagine,
Mm-hmm.
and they obviously have different qualities. They're obviously really good at it,
Yeah.
but they're really good at different types of in-game leading. If you know what I mean.
What would you say is, because you were talking before about the kind of looser style with Greyhounds. Is that the main difference you see between sort of Imagine's style and Dexter's?
Yeah, I think Dexter's obviously his style is more reactive based. Like
Mm-hmm.
he reacts to what the other team's doing, and Imagine was sort of like we have a goal, we have to do this goal, blah blah blah. If you know what I mean?
Right. So Dexter's just a little bit more like Spider-Man, and Imagine is like Batman. I don't know if that
Yeah,
even
yeah,
slightly
sure.
works, but we'll go with it.
Yeah, I think like yeah, Dexter's definitely more reactive. He reacts to what the other team's doing, and he lets us make our own decision making as well. And Imagine was obviously the same, but yeah, I'm not sure.
Fair enough. So I think now we'll just go into playing now on this Greyhounds lineup. Obviously, I just want to get your current sort of feelings about it. How are you feeling now that you're sort of moved into the house and you've played that first qualifier now? How is everything going over there?
Yeah, it's definitely good. Been putting in a ton of hours individually and teamwork, team based as well. Definitely good to have like decent internet. It doesn't show on the camera, but it's better than my internet at home. I can actually play properly, and yeah, no, definitely feeling very confident going into Malmo as well. It'll be good to get a boot camp in as well if possible.
Fair enough. So I want to go then from that, obviously, to the Malmo Qualifier, because that was the tournament that happened on the weekend, or the qualifier that happened on the weekend. And you guys had... what was the... You guys were talking about server issues. Was that some sort of issue with that going on?
Yeah, well, for the past like 2 years, ESEA, like every qualifier that's on the ESEA, we've had like issues.
Mm-hmm.
So either like rubber banding. Basically, we were rubber banding on the weekend. Like we were just lagging. We couldn't throw any util basically. It was just like really bad. Like every qual on Facer has been completely fine. We've had no problem. And then ESEA was just terrible. It's been like even like the pug servers as well.
Yeah, so obviously then, I imagine, obviously it is important to say, like, obviously all the teams are playing under the same conditions, but that's obviously never ideal to play under that, especially not when you're qualifying for an international tournament. So that is something that I saw, and obviously it would definitely have an effect on the results, and I imagine especially the early results could maybe have been impacted by that. But I just wanted to get that out of the way, obviously, just for context sake before we go through it. So the first map that you played through was Greyhounds versus Jade. That was a 2-0. Fairly clean victory there. And then that's when we went to Genuine. Now, I think this is obviously a talking point here because they made it all the way to the the grand finals, or the upper bracket final, whichever one we call it now, with the double elim. And that was the second game you guys played, and that one was 2-1. Now, what were the main sort of things that you saw going in with that particular match there, the 2-1 one, not the final?
What do you mean by that?
So obviously they took away Inferno, or sorry, they took away Overpass and then Nuke on you guys. What was the? Did you? Was there anything unexpected about that result there?
Really. I guess I think individually they played really good. They've obviously been putting in a ton of work. They have a lot of good strategies.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was sort of, I don't want to take any credit from them. I think it was sort of on us, like how we played. We were playing like, it was obviously, we had 3 days practice or whatever since I moved into the house.
Yeah, for sure.
And we were obviously we were playing very scared, I think. And they were just like taking advantage of that, which they did really well.
Fair enough. Did you see, obviously you've played against Genuine before, because obviously a lot of people now are going to be looking at this result and maybe going, okay, well, does this mean anything now for Genuine? Could you see them do you think this is a visual improvement or something where, like you said, it's more of an individual thing on yourselves on that Greyhounds lineup, obviously because of the lack of play?
I think they are very good, to be honest. Like strategically, they're very good. But I think sometimes they lack a little bit of firepower. I'm not sure where they're going to get that from. Obviously, Apoc Dad is really good as well, IGLing and Orping. I think he's one of their star players, and Skull Hunter. I think in the final, Skull Hunter didn't play as good as he did in the first series, which probably affected the way they played as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because he had a huge impact in the first best of 3 for sure.
So then oh Jesus, no, I'm not going to use that word because that one's not going to come out for another at least 2 minutes. But like opposing that result there with the grand final, which obviously was a BO5. Now you went into that with them having a map advantage for you, so in a way it's kind of an uphill battle. But really, I mean, 16-6, 16-6, and then 16-2 on Nuke. Nuke, in my opinion, being obviously the most. Well, it was the most defining of the lot, but to do that against Genuine, who before had really, that was kind of like their home map in this tournament, it felt like, where they would go on Nuke and just, it almost was like, why are people continuing to pick Nuke against them? Yep. And then you guys go in and 16-2 them on Nuke. What was the main sort of changes, I guess, going into that grand final to turn up the gas?
To be honest, we didn't really change anything. We knew, like, in the first series, we didn't play as good as we should have, and we didn't look into them or counter them or anything. It was all individual, I think. We just, like, basically all we said was just play more comp, do whatever, take some fights, and I don't know, it seemed to work out.
Fair enough. So it's almost just a case of keeping up that mentality and not allowing past results to sort of impact how you play in the second series then.
Yeah, I guess so. Sort of like, just don't let it get to your head. Like, it was one of those games, I guess, and shit happens. Sorry for the language, but
it's all good.
Yeah, shit happens, and then basically just move on, put all effort into the next one.
Do you think that teams in, I would say, let's go with top 5 teams in Australia, have any issues with sort of leaving past series behind them, or is that something that you would feel like the top of Australia kind of has under wraps right now?
It's hard to say. Like, I think some individuals are obviously better than others. I think in past it was definitely a factor for teams. I used to get affected by it, I think, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But I think now it's pretty good, I think. But I don't know.
Fair
it's hard
enough.
to speak for everyone else. So.
Yeah. Do you think that was the switch to Greyhounds the kind of thing that sort of allowed you to, I guess, no longer be affected by that, or was that something that you had earlier on?
I think it just comes with age and maturity. Like, I probably would have happened a year ago or something.
Yeah.
Just comes with, like, maturity, understanding the game more.
Fair enough. With playing under Dexter, obviously I want to go back to this one, but when you are playing in a series like the first, well, actually, you know what? Let's throw to the Greyhounds Avant one, because I do want to get to this, so we can tie this into this. But when you're playing against a team like Avant, who are now seriously starting to sort of, I guess, throw their weight around and make it clear that they are here to stay in that top 4, what are the kind of things that Dexter focuses on? Is it a mentality thing? Is it keeping everybody calm, or is it just, listen, guys, we're okay, let's just keep going, this is what we're doing this round, or just like you said, playing a more loose style?
I think from what I've noticed so far, it's more like, if we're winning, even if it's by, like, say we're up 8-0 or whatever, he's just, like, basically just telling everyone to keep focused, like, stay focused, they can still come back,
yeah,
etc., and still just, like, keep playing our own game. Like, we're doing great.
Obviously, your that Greyhounds lineup is, I would say, a pretty vocal lineup, especially when they go to those the major qualifiers or the minors.
Yeah.
Does that have I guess because you're saying there about Dexter, and obviously he does have a way to stay focused. Does that kind of throw people out of focus, or is that kind of not really a part of staying in the zone?
No, I don't think it throws people out of focus. I think it's, yeah, definitely sort of part of just staying in the zone.
Fair enough. So it's as long as it's the sort of positive, I guess, hype, then
Yeah.
it allows you to, keep going and stay focused and go, okay, well, listen, we're doing well here, but we've got to keep pushing forward. So I do want to then switch to the So we'll cover now that Avant game, because that was the map that you lost overpass on, and then it was an overtime on Nuke. So I think, would you say it's fair to say that Avant was the toughest challenge of the tournament, of the qualifier?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think it was, yeah, they played really good. It was still sort of getting into the rhythm of thing, but yeah, they were definitely the toughest challenge. I'd say they got really unlucky on Nuke, to be honest, on the last round, if you saw it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think it's the thing I always look at it as is there's obviously being unlucky sometimes in those overtime matches, but then you do have to sort of keep in mind that Avant are a fairly young team. Even, obviously they're a fairly young team. They don't have anywhere near the experience that some of the Greyhounds core has, and so
Yeah.
I always look at it as like there's a level of like mentality of keeping it together in those big matches. Now, obviously, Avant's made it to the minor qualifier, so they do have some international experience, but I still would imagine going overtime on Nuke against Greyhounds to keep themselves alive in Malmo is going to be one of those things where it's like, okay, well, nerves are a little bit present at the very least.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think everyone with experience even gets nervous sometimes when in those tough games. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of like, facing the nerves or whatever, getting through them.
So, talking now about Avant, I did want to sort of broaden that out because I wanted to get your opinion on sort of a top four right now, because it's fairly fluctuating right now in this Australian scene. Now, I would say obviously it still remains Greyhounds at number one, then you have Chiefs at number two, and then that's when it starts to get a little bit freaky. And I would say at this point in time, you could probably have Avant above Order. Where would you sort of place some of those teams?
Yeah, I'd probably go the same. I think. Probably like us, Chiefs, Avant, Order, Genuine, I guess. I'd still put Order above Genuine for sure. Just because of like,
Yeah, because it's
yeah,
it's one result. I would agree. I have them above Genuine as well. Um, I don't know about you, but I feel like I need to see a little bit more from Genuine, because they do have a tendency to do some crazy shit where they pull off some mad upset result and everybody's like, woo, mad hype, and then they go into the next day to some random tournament and lose to Paradox. So it's like,
yeah,
not that
yeah.
Paradox is obviously a bad team. They're doing well. They're definitely up in that top 10.
Mhm.
But it's when you're going all the way to the grand final, and taking that map advantage in the final of a Malmo qualifier, to then go and lose to Paradox, there is a little bit of a inconsistency
Yeah.
worry there for me. So, but I don't know. That can definitely be like they're a young team as well as Avant is, and Ground Zero and Paradox. So these are things that they can probably work on over time, and I hope they keep that core together, which is
Yeah.
obviously the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because Greyhounds have had a fairly long-lasting core, and then does it? I think it might be Genuine who has the second longest-lasting core in Australia, unless it's Chiefs.
I think it would be by core you mean core three?
Yeah.
It would be Order, I think, still right.
Oh,
Ali, Imagine Hats, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right. So, but obviously, the point that I was trying to make before I totally just made myself look like an idiot was that a lot of these teams in our region tend to have a core that doesn't really last that long, and have a tendency to split from groups and never really try things any more than 2 or 3 months, where it's like, okay, well, this isn't working, time to absolutely throw everything in the bin and try something completely different, and just hope that eventually we find a 5-man that works perfectly and we get to an international event. So what is your sort of like take on the whole keeping teams together situation?
Yeah. I'm not sure, to be honest. Like, I mean, you obviously need more than 3 months, like way longer, at least a year to get
Mm.
everything under, like, everything practiced and perfect or whatever. Even then, it still takes longer, but I'm not sure. I still think I think roster changes are okay when they're necessary, as long as you're not just throwing them around everywhere. It's just like, you need the right mix of players, which is really hard to find in Australia, obviously.
Yeah, it's I want to say it's getting better because I want to be optimistic.
Yeah,
Um,
it definitely is getting better, for
yeah,
sure.
so that's obviously the thing that you don't want to ever get too much into, because there's definitely people that would say, oh, it's never going to get any better, but there's definitely been visual improvement in lineups coming out, and I think that's why people get so excited about Genuine and teams like Ground Zero, is that, and Avant as well can be classified in that as like, okay, this is finally some new blood that's actually performing and playing well, and taking it to teams like yourselves who have been at the top for a fairly long period of time now. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I wanted to move now uh, to sort of solely focus on Grayhound, because there's a big difference when it comes to Grayhound and sort of the other lineups, and that is the amount of international experience and consistency that you guys tend to have. You're now filling in for Urcast. So, what are the sort of main changes that that you're feeling, or that you plan to make now that you're moving into this Greyhounds lineup? What with this change to Greyhound, what changes now for you, if
I
anything?
think uh I think it's just like a new role for like the past 2 years or whatever in TM and order. I was sort of playing the lurk role,
Yeah.
which is something that I wanted at the start, but then over time I realized probably better in a different position. And basically, the only thing that's changed really in this lineup is I've got that role that I wanted, more freedom, and yeah, basically that's it really.
Right. So it's a new job, I guess, and a little bit more freedom to sort of think on your own terms, and change that around, which I can imagine would probably be the ideal situation for pretty much anyone. So
Yeah, it's definitely it's just refreshing. It's refreshing, obviously,
yeah.
after being stuck like that for a few years.
Now, um, let's go to the Malmo tournament itself now, because this is that is the next international tournament that you guys will be attending. Is that correct? Just want to make sure.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
So that tournament has a fairly stacked playing field here, and you've got a lot of big names: Liquid, Astralis, NRG, Vitality, ENCE, Mouse Sports, G2, Navi. I mean, it's pretty much almost as stacked as the major in terms of like teams that are playing in this. Where do you see Greyhound, or what are your expectations going into this tournament?
I think we could definitely, obviously, saw at the major that we to the top teams, like Vitality and such. But I think we can definitely do that again, maybe even one better.
Mm-hmm.
I expect I expect us to at least, I don't know. It's hard to say. I haven't really like had much thought about it. I just want to go in there and do our best, to be honest.
Yeah, play the best,
Obviously,
and
with limited practice, try to get as much done as we can in the next whatever. I think it's a week or 12 days or something we have. Just
mm-hmm.
say I try get some European practice in if we can. And yeah,
Fair enough. So again, it is about the experience then now to with bringing you in. Is there anything that sort of changes in the style after this tournament? Because obviously it's definitely going to be a fairly short notice international event. Is there any difference in the way that you are intending to play this tournament as opposed to, okay, now that we have a little bit of experience, we're going to switch it up and play a more, I guess, I wouldn't say structured style, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I don't think there'll be much change. I think it'll just be a matter of implementing me into their system that they already had, which I've already started to do, and yeah, just try. Yeah, I think that's it. Really implement me into their system and their play style because it's a lot different to what I've experienced in the past. So it'll take me a bit to adjust to as well.
Fair enough. So, obviously, so it's a new lineup going in there. You're just going to be playing the sort of the style that well, like you said, they're implementing you into the system, into replacing. Is it replacing Urcast or have they switched people around?
We've switched people around.
Fair enough. So then, it's sort of I guess, a new look Grayhound then with you in it, with the roles switching around, which is obviously a good sign because that's can be a way to improving your situation. Now, obviously, you've not been in there for too long, and it is definitely a far away question, but this is always the thing that pops up with Grayhound is their sort of expectations going into the next major. They've made it through twice now to the minor system, and the second time they went through, that I thought they played pretty well, and you can definitely be satisfied with that. But is it? What are if obviously we're throwing really far ahead here, but what are your sort of expectations going into that next major tournament? Is it to just qualify again for that main qualifier, or are you now looking really to make it all the way to the sort of, I don't know what the stages are called now, but the one before the playoff
I
stage?
don't need that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Honestly, everyone is hungry to make I think it's Challenger. I don't even know, to be honest.
Yeah. Let's go with that.
Yeah, obviously people want to win at least one or two games and make it so you don't have to play at the minor anymore. I think that'll definitely be the goal for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's hungry to prove and obviously win as many games as we can at the major if we're gonna make it first. But yeah.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, just
Because
skipping it. Focus on this year for now, I think.
Yeah, so there's definitely what are the sort of international events that are in your radar right now? Are there any more after Malmo? What's the current sort of schedule for you guys?
There's Malmo, then we have Extremes Land qualifiers,
Yeah.
which will go to China or something, I don't know. And then HP Omen, which will be next month to qualify for that when it goes to Jakarta or something. And then there'll be like AM Beijing after that, which will hopefully go to Asia to qual for.
Fair enough.
Because they don't have an Oceania qual.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, no, you're right about that. So they will allow you guys to go over to Asia and qualify for that?
I think that's the rules.
Fair enough.
We're allowed to go to qual from Asia here.
Okay. Well, that's probably going to make some people happy because I remember when they announced that, it was like, what the hell's going on? Where's the oceanic spot? But that's good to hear that you guys will be able to play in that.
It's definitely frustrating not having Oceania qual, considering the last, I think, 3 tournaments, like DreamHack and IEM, in the Asian quals, an Oceanic team has won every time. Pretty much.
Yeah, 100%. It does seem a little bit strange, but I mean, I guess it's new teams, right, that you're playing. I don't know. I'm trying to look at some crazy ass positives.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to ask, is there any sort of potential you think for Grayhound to move base out of Australia? Is there any sort of intention for that, or is that not something that's even discussed at the moment?
Hasn't really been discussed, but I don't think either any of the players want to move from Australia. Obviously, everyone has families, girlfriend, so I'd rather stay based in Australia. It would definitely be ideal.
So, with that obviously being the case, then I've talked to a lot of players and teams about this, but obviously the isolation that Australia has in our scene definitely impacts the way that we can train against international opponents, and that sort of experience level we can get. Obviously, every time Sydney comes over, that's a big time for people to prac with those international level teams. But for you guys, Greyhounds definitely have the most international sort of exposure of any Australian team. Is there any sort of things that you feel like you need to improve in that aspect of like, okay, we want to be attending more of those international tournaments, or is it the schedule that you have right now, you're feeling like, okay, this is enough right now where we can visually improve our play?
I think the plan is to, obviously, everyone wants to attend as many international tournaments as you can, and a boot camp before those tournaments is ideal to get at least a bit of practice in against European teams, because you don't learn anything in Australia, to be honest, with practice.
Yeah,
it's like you don't get punished for anything, and yeah, I'm not sure really.
It's definitely like you've almost, I guess, drained the pool of Australia for all of the information it can give you and all the I guess strength. I'm trying to think of some random anecdote for that, but I can't. So we'll just throw it away. So with this playing now at this international level, you were talking about boot camps there. Do you have any plans to do boot camps outside of tournaments, or does that always come in as, okay, we have a tournament in this area, let's fly there a few weeks before and we'll just boot camp?
I think that's usually the case. We'd rather do that before tournaments, just so it's like fresh in our minds or whatever, and we also, like, we're going there anyway. It saves a lot of money for the organization and stuff, but I think we'll be planning some boot camps hopefully for next year. Not sure about this year, to be honest.
Fair enough. Now,
try to get as much international exposure as you can, or like international experience.
Indeed. I just had a massive mind blank about what I was gonna. There we go. Okay, so Greyhounds with this this major sort of situation. I'm going to throw it back to that, but the major situation that we have going on right now is that obviously Renegades have now made it twice to the playoffs, but I think a lot more emphasis comes out on this Greyhounds lineup now to do well at international events, because I don't know how you guys look at it, but do you feel like because you guys are so dominant, you sort of bottle cap the rest of the scene, or do you think that you can sort of almost, I don't know, like drain the information that you guys are learning from playing international down to the other teams?
Yeah, I definitely think I sort of don't really understand what you mean, but I think the teams we're practicing get more from us than we get from them.
Yeah.
You get that?
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
I think the only people we get like learn stuff from would be like Chiefs, Order, maybe Genuine or Avant, but it's really hard to verse them all the time because we're versing them in competitions. They're like our competitors for the qualifiers, so we don't want to verse them too much.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That is
Other than that, it's like the lower tier teams that we don't really get much from.
Yeah. That is an interesting situation there, though, that like you said, because you probably don't want to prac them too much because they're obviously the main competition every time you want to go to an international event. And a lot of those international events, it is only one oceanic spot, right? So a lot of the times, if a team wants to make and get any kind of international experience, they have to beat the beast, which is your team, right? So it's an interesting situation where if you guys got, is it possible that if you guys start really doing well at these tournaments that they just invite you guys to them, or because of the regional situation, do you always have to qualify? Like, what's the deal there?
As far as I know, before I joined, Greyhound have had a few invites to international talk, but they had to turn them down because of, for example, this Malmo Qual. we'd rather play at that instead of some other ones. But yeah, I think if we keep qualifying and keep showing some presence, we'll definitely get invited to some event. You'd hope so.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are ranked top in the 20th spot right now on HLTV, and I mean, if we go off the qualifier there of who was invited to that, then I guess it does mean that you guys are now starting to get into that roster of teams that would be invited to events, and maybe if that does happen, you guys are allowed to, I guess, I don't know. It just allows some of those other teams to make it through and broaden the amount of Australian representation that is in those international tournaments. So this is why I feel like, as much as everybody really likes Renegades and we're all like super hyped that they go to playoffs, I feel like so much more pressure, especially from a perspective of the scene, comes out on you guys, because you guys doing well kind of allows the rest of Australia to have more chances to play at those international tournaments, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's good for the scene as a whole, I guess, if we start getting invited.
Definitely. Now, when you look at other teams in our region, who do you think is, I guess, the most international ready team, aside from yourselves, obviously? Or do you think there's a pretty big drop off there still?
I'd probably say Chiefs. Or maybe, yeah, probably Chiefs. Right. Like, they haven't been, as far as I know, they haven't been practicing because of Ryan having the hand injury and stuff, so they haven't been practicing for a while.
Yeah.
And I think when they start getting back into it, maybe they will have a good chance. They'd probably be the most international ready team, I'd say.
What tournaments can they not attend because of the issues that team has? Is it a vast amount of tournaments? Do you know? Like,
I think it's only Valve, like the majors.
Right. So it's only
as
the
far
majors.
As far as I know, I think they can attend all ESL or IEMs and DreamHacks. I think, yeah.
Well, that's good then. That's obviously the main sort of sad thing that you see whenever you look at the Chiefs lineup, because they're so interesting and fun to watch and they have a lot of skill there, but it does suck whenever they can't.
Yeah, definitely sucks.
Yeah. Because you want to see them at those qualifiers, but I guess, it is what it is.
Yeah.
There's no point in minding about it. There's not much we could do at this point, as Valve's made it very clear that they are not going to make any changes to that rule. So I do want to finish off with sort of a similar-ish question, but I guess because it kind of ties into the Malmo thing, but with now being into this lineup and you guys have now got this new 5 here, you're starting to work together and sort of implement yourself into the situation or the team and the way you guys play. What are some of the future goals that you guys are aiming for as a lineup?
I'd say just qualify for every international event we have that we are able to qualify for. Obviously attend the major.
Yeah.
The minor and then the major, and basically probably just improve every day, because like it's only been a week or something, we still have a ton of work to do. We've only just got into the basics really, so basically, yeah, I think that's it.
Right, so it's the general improvement then, and making sure to get as much international experience as possible, and sort of improving your way on that that sort of pathway, I guess. So it does look like things are looking up for you guys. You're definitely in a position now with you coming into the team to really start to actually make some changes there and try to push this as far as possible. And obviously, it is interesting because you guys tend to carry a lot of our scene's hopes when it comes to international tournaments. Obviously, Renegades right now are going through their issues or whatever. That's why they're not at Malmo. So you guys are going to be the main representation there for Australia, and I'm sure that the entire of the Australian scene will be behind you, rooting for you guys. So I do wish you guys the best of luck. And I'd like to thank you for coming on to the podcast because it's been an absolute pleasure, man.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for listening to the podcast. It's been a while. Listen, I've been busy. I got assignments. So I'm writing stuff, essays. You know how it is, okay? I got to live my real life and then do this. But I'm back now. I've got breaks. So we'll be trying to do a few more of these interviews as much as possible. So stay tuned and we'll catch you next time. Peace.